Yeah, I try that. Okay, yeah, now we're okay. Good evening, everyone. But just a sec. I think you and I should be able to talk online now. Okay, why don't you put yourself on too? Good evening, Susan. Are you there?
I'm here. Trying to lock talk, but it's not coming up.
Yeah, I'm having the same problem trying to lock talk. Hello, everybody who's on this call. We'll be getting started in about 15 minutes. It's our first ever webinar. We're just sorting out some technical difficulties, but we do expect to get started in about 15 minutes. Hi, Susan. And Bridge. I'm pressing options and opening up, trying to lock talk, but it's not doing that. I'm going to see if I can change some of the other media options, and that'll help.
I've been able to lock talk.
I'm not able to lock talk.
Nor am I.
Oh. Okay. You are already on the... Okay, I'm going to... Options and lock talk doesn't work? What is it doing?
When I do it, Bridge, I go there, I click on it, the check mark just doesn't change.
So it does check mark?
For me, it's grayed out. You can't choose it.
Okay. Can you try now, Susan, again, once that I've...
It's still doing the same thing.
Oh. Okay.
There's
Tim?
a talk hotkey.
Oh, Bruce is here. Hi, Bruce. We have I think the Wimba person here, so let me just put him a thing. Bruce?
Yes, Bridge Pal.
As Tim and Susan are not able to lock talk.
It's Tim here, Bruce. I'm unable to lock talk. I know it's under options. I just can't get there.
This is Susan.
Okay, Tim.
Talk clicking is checked. I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, you're going to want to. Tim, yours is on. And Susan, you need to just go under options and click where it says on the word where it says lock talk, and it will be on.
It's grayed out. I can't choose it. It doesn't let me choose it. Talk clicking is checked. Does that have anything to do with it?
No, my talk clicking is also checked, but that I can lock talk.
This is Susan. There's a talk hotkey. It looks like I could just hit control and keep that down. Would that work?
Tim, can you turn your lock talk off, please?
Done.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. This is number one class, so we have some things that we're just smoothing out here. So bear with us here. Susan, if you want to try this again, the lock talk doesn't have any other options. When you click on the word lock talk, it will lock it. But as you can tell from the other ones, if you've got multiple people with lock talk, what happens is it picks up the speakers for the other people that are in bold, are like Bridge Pal and Tim and myself are all in as presenters, and the sound will sort of echo around. So it's best to have just one person lock talk at a time so that it doesn't act like a speakerphone picking up the other person's thing and rebroadcasting it in. So if it's okay with you to use your control key, then that's a good way of doing it. But otherwise, if you want to use lock talk, you just click on the word once and it should put a check mark beside it and everything should be good.
I'd rather be able to lock talk and have to hold this button down the whole time because I want to use my other hand to be able to take notes and then advance the presentation. I can't lock talk. The option is grayed out. It doesn't allow me to choose it.
Hi, Bridge. Yeah, I don't actually know how to type into the chat room. Yes? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Yes, I did, yeah. Yes. A- And where's the just enter on my keyboard? Okay. And okay. And the other question I was asking, I don't know if you just heard it a minute ago. I tried to say it to everybody, which is that I'm not sure how to tell people how they type in their question. It's the same thing, I guess. They just type into that box in main room, and so and okay. Well, that's great. Okay. All right. Well, that's great. Hopefully, we're going to get. Okay. Okay. Now the other problem we're having at the moment is I can't open any presentations at the moment. No, I've been trying. I've got GT intro to Susan Santone. I can't open it by pressing go. You know. Yes, please. Yes. Excellent. Okay. Well, that's great. So I think we're on our way, and I may need you after these 3 slides to then introduce Susan, or to bring Susan's up. Okay. In a moment. No, I'm going to introduce her, but you just to introduce her presentation. These are just 3 slides, and then you have to go and open her presentation. Okay. All right. I'm going to say goodbye and get online here. A sec.
Sorry, what's going on, Tim?
Hi, Bruce. I'm unable to be heard, it appears.
No, everybody can hear you. I can hear you.
I can hear you too, Tim.
Can I just do a quick? Is it okay if I do just a very quick introduction to the tool and what's going on right now, and perhaps it'll help people feel a little bit more comfortable with this, and then you can start. Is that all right?
Yes, please, Bruce. That would be great.
Just checking to make sure that Susan can see the presentation. She said she can't see the presentation. There seems to be
I
three.
cannot see it. I can't see it.
Sorry, Susan. Okay, so if you can go over onto the side and go to, if you click on Susan Santone Thursday and click on Go, there'll be a drop down with the slides. Now Tim can also do the same thing because he'll have access to that too, or Bridge Pal can do that. And click through it, and you just tell them when your next slide if you want. That'll have your slides on it.
Okay, I have it up.
Hello, everybody. It's Tim Grant here. I think we're ready to go. Bear with us. Keep your fingers crossed. We're not quite, as you can appreciate, we're not quite sure that this is going to work, but we'll give it our best shot. And so a belated welcome to everyone. As of this afternoon, about 300 people had registered, so we know lots more people are going to join, and hopefully they will. It'll be smooth sailing from here. While it's evening here in Toronto, we know there are people joining us from England, from the west coasts of North America, from Hawaii, New Zealand, Australia. A hearty welcome to all. I'm going to start my introduction.
Sorry, Tim, it just dropped off your voice. Can you check that?
Okay, sorry about that, folks. Just to continue, just to give you a sense of what lies ahead in this hour-long session, Susan will be speaking for about 25 minutes or so. At a few junctures during the presentation, we will stop and ask you some questions just to make sure that we're responding to your level of interest and experience. And at the end of her presentation, we're going to throw it open for you to ask any questions you have. And at that point, I might want to draw your attention right now to the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. You'll see way down in the bottom left-hand corner, it says Main Room. And then there's a blank box to the right. That's the place where you're going to type in your questions. And you don't have to wait till the end of Susan's presentation to ask such a question. You can do that right from the beginning. The question will show up in the chat room. That's okay. We'll come back to it and sort through the questions, and I will pose as many of them as I can to Susan at that point. And at the end of our session, I'll then invite everyone to stay with us for another 2 minutes to complete a very short survey. And those of you who do complete it will be eligible to win one of 2 free subscriptions to our quarterly Green Teacher magazine. Okay, well, without further ado, let me introduce our very special presenter this evening. I first learned of Susan Santone's work almost 10 years ago when she submitted an article and set of classroom activities entitled Green Economics, Counting the Earth In. Susan was one of the first educators on this continent who were thinking deeply about sustainability and how to engage young people in this critically important topic. Susan Santone is the founder and executive director of Creative Educational Solutions, a nonprofit based in Southeast Michigan. She's a former classroom teacher. She specializes in instructional design and training for sustainability, ecological economics, and cultural issues. As head of creative change, she's led multiple curriculum reform and teacher education initiatives working nationally with public schools, universities, and nonprofit organizations. She's also an adjunct instructor in teacher education at Eastern Michigan University. Susan, welcome.
Thank you, Tim. I'm really pleased to be here, and I want to thank everyone for their time and attention and joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. Okay, I see the clapping. Thank you. I'm going to move the slide, I hope. Slide's not moving. So I guess we're going to start tonight with a question. We're going to ask folks how familiar you are with sustainability, and we'll give you a few seconds there to respond. Okay, great. Well, our agenda tonight, we just had introductions, and we're going to be focusing on using the ecological footprint as a context for introducing sustainability. Generally, we'll do a lot of, we'll review strategies and activities, we'll have a few questions interspersed, and at the end, we'll look at some sources of instructional materials. So let's go ahead. So the ecological footprint is really an interdisciplinary context for introducing sustainability. And as we'll see, it integrates earth science, economics, community engagement, culture and democratic values, and the sciences. Okay. We're going to be looking at an instructional framework. One of the efforts we're doing here at Creative Change is we're trying to help educators use sustainability as the context for effective instruction. We are really trying to help schools and colleges institutionalize it, and so we're doing that by showing how this can be the context for effective instruction. So we have a framework here where throughout, let's say, a unit or a course on the footprint or sustainability that could last weeks or even months, we begin by establishing relevance. How do we help students understand what's at stake? Why is this important? How do we open up the dialogue? Then we bring students through a series of lessons and activities where they develop deep knowledge, a lot of deep investigation and reflection, and they're building a knowledge base so that they can make informed decisions. And finally, they apply that knowledge to take action to advance sustainability in the school, community, or larger world. So as we go through the activities, we'll be doing so within this framework. So one way that I open the conversation with sustainability with learners of all ages and all contexts is a very fundamental question. What do we need for a fulfilling life? What really makes us happy? And so through this, the question really becomes about well-being. What do we really want out of life? What is really going to make us happy? What messages do we get about this? How much is enough? And why does this even matter? So this is an opening kind of question, and there's a series of activities that is wrapped around it that I've used with third graders through college professors because it's a great entry point and it's relevant to everyone. As you can imagine, some of those responses are somewhat predictable: food, air, shelter, water, clothing, health, love, friends, family. It's a very similar list every time. And so, of course, you can always elaborate and think about how is this similar or different across cultures, how is this similar or different across time, in the past, in the future. So even in just this opening activities, there's a lot of different ways that this can go and enrich it, depending on who your audience is. So the next question then becomes, if we need all of those things, what supports our well-being? And I'm having trouble here advancing the slide. The slide is not advancing. There we go. So here, oops, sorry, it advanced a little bit too much. Tim, can you help control the slides? Okay, so let's stay with that one. So the next question then is what supports our well-being? And so what we introduce here on these cards are different words. We have the natural commons and the cultural and social commons. So the commons are these shared gifts that are both natural and human created that we need to pass on to future generations undiminished. So on the green cards, we've got the natural commons, things like sunlight, air, water, soil, bacteria. And the cultural and the social commons, language, education, stories, music, poems. And we ask learners to say, okay, if you want health and happiness and family and friends and entertainment and education and you want all of that, which of these things can we do without? And so that's a very interesting discussion because people usually say, oh, we can't do without any of them, or there's a heated debate about whether or not we can do without computers or whatnot. But it helps people start to think about what does it really take to support our well-being. Next. And so one of the core concepts at the very beginning is the idea of interdependence, that our well-being is supported through the interdependence of the natural and the cultural commons. So we also ask learners to think about how do the greens and the yellows work together. So here's some very common examples: soils and food markets, sewers and bacteria, sunsets and poetry. So we see right at the beginning that our well-being is supported through the interdependence of human and natural systems. And that's really a foundation issue for sustainability. Okay? So then, again, there's some more exploring. We're just sort of hitting some high points here. But this is a framework from Herman Daly, a renowned ecological economist. And so he looks at it this way. The ultimate ends is what we want. We want family, fulfillment, spirituality, love. But getting that takes things such as food, water, shelter, work, transportation. All of that requires books, tools, buildings, and human-created capital. And, of course, all of that comes from the natural world, natural resources and ecosystem services. So the core question that we introduce then is how do we get more of the ultimate ends while preserving the ultimate means and its ability to support it all? So this becomes the foundational question of sustainability. How can we get more of this up here, everything we want, while at the same time preserving the ability of the environment to provide it? And so that's sort of a framer for the ecological footprint. Okay? And so through these activities, we generate some big ideas that are going to launch us into the next stage. All humans share common needs and desires for well-being. Again, that can vary across time and place and culture, but there are some commonalities. Our well-being is supported through the interdependence of human-created and natural systems. And again, humans are part of the environment. That's really a key issue. The environment's not out there in the Amazon or the Arctic. It's right here. We're all in it right now. And so that raises the question, how can economic systems, food systems, which is what we're going to take a look at, how can we organize society in ways that enable individuals and communities to thrive, again, while sustaining the ability of the environment to support it? And again, we want to move beyond a paradigm of bare survival to what does it really mean to live well? What does it really mean to have well-being? And you'd be really surprised that as you explore this, again, whether it's with young students or professors, people really question their assumptions about well-being, and people really start to understand that material goods isn't always the recipe for that. Okay? Okay, so...
Hi, Susan.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's Tim here. I'm going to jump in. Folks, we have a few questions, as I mentioned earlier to everyone, that we were going to ask you, but since your host is now the slide changer, I'm not really able to jump onto the other screen that I'm supposed to sort of review the answers you're giving to this. So I'm just going to have to leave it in. We'll just have to ignore the questions this time with your indulgence, and you can let Susan carry on.
Okay. So we're going to give folks a couple seconds to answer, and then we'll advance the slide, Tim, when you're ready. Okay, so with our foundation set of well-being and interdependence, now we have a foundation to start looking at more deeply at, are we using interdependence as a guiding principle for how we do things? So we're going to look at something called the story of two strawberry jams as a way to bring people into sustainability and life cycle analysis and the footprint in a way that's engaging and is inquiry-based. Okay. So go ahead. So what we do is we have a two-part poem, and it tells the story of two strawberry jams, and it's read back and forth, and these are just some diagrams here. But one strawberry is big organic, so it's grown far away, it's organic, it was transported really far. There was a fair amount of energy used in the processing, and then some of that waste ends up in a landfill. But hey, it's organic. Now, the second strawberry is local, but it's not organic. So this is grown in a community garden. They used a little bit of pesticides and fertilizers. It was grown by a youth group, some paid workers, processed in the community kitchen, sold at the farmer's market, composted, jars are sterilized and reused. So we bring students into thinking about, well, which one is sustainable? How do we know? What do we do? So to do that, we bring them through a comparison and contrast exercise. The next slide. Next slide, please. So here they are comparing and contrasting the two different strawberries. No, back one. There we go. And so they have to look at the difference of the strawberries in terms of transportation, energy use, the relationships between the consumers and the producers, how workers were treated, geographically, how far did things travel, types of transportation used. So we bring them into the full story. And what we're trying to do is help people understand that, one, we can't just look at one element such as organic or local. And two, that we have to think about all of the elements of the system. So we have to think about the workers. We have to think about equity. We have to think about economic impacts. And so we're broadening, through this even one simple activity, we're broadening our understanding, our approach of what sustainability is. Okay? So from there, and again, this can go in a lot of different directions. I'm just hitting some high points here. We look at the life cycle of the different jams. So this is where it starts moving a little bit more into the science of sustainability. So we look at growth and harvest, processing, transport, consumption, disposal. And what we do is we have people start mapping what are the resources used for each of those stages and what are the wastes produced. We find that people can usually identify things such as, glass for the jars and metal for the chalk and coal for the electricity. People have a lot harder time thinking about what those wastes are, especially as they're changing form. Sure, you may see the jar in the trash or the recycling, but you might not be thinking about CO2 emissions. Then the next layer that people tend to really struggle with is where does all that come from? All of those inputs, of course, come from the environment. All of those outputs go back into the environment. And so by doing this gradually unfolds, and so people start tracing the journey, thinking about the inputs, where did all of that come from, thinking about the outputs, and then where does all of that go? And the environment is here. The environment is outside. The environment is a containing system. Here's another strawberry. Has a life cycle as well, but there's fewer inputs. And here you can see the waste, quote, wastes are actually inputs for new parts of the system. So in this situation, this is more of a cyclical life cycle, and so waste becomes food. And so again, that's another thing. There's always outputs. The question is, are they polluting or nourishing? And so leftover jam, old toast, when that's composted, then that becomes nourishing. And so again, trying to help people understand that in order to assess whether it's really sustainable or not, we have to be looking at all of these elements. Okay? Okay. So again, I know there's a lot of diagrams here, and Tim said this would be archived, so you can always go back and look, and we have a lot of these diagrams on our website. Another way to look at this, and this is why the footprint is so great, is because it opens up the door to ecological economics. And again, this is Herman Daly. He had that one spectrum, the ends mean spectrum. And so the idea is that here's the economy inside. Here's our life cycle. Here's how we produce things. That's inside the environment. And so everything we do takes materials out of the environment and puts wastes back in, and there is no way. And so, again, if you want to go deeper into the science, you can start talking about thermodynamics and entropy, conservation of energy, and the idea that this framework that the economy exists inside of the environment, it isn't crazy environmentalists talking about it. It's actually hard science that demonstrates that. And so maybe in a future webinar and another discussion, comparing this to the conventional economic model that treats the environment just merely as a source of resources and it's completely disconnected. So this model, and that's why the footprint is so great, because it really establishes a foundation for looking at the economics of this. And again, that branches off into a whole other course. Okay? So again, you know, with sustainability, we want to be cognizant of the culture piece and the equity piece. So just to kind of summarize, you know, interdependence is a function of ecology. It's how the world works. But whether or not we recognize this is a function of culture. And so what are the messages we're getting in our culture about whether or not we're interdependent with the environment? And so that impacts how we structure food systems and other aspects of the economy. So we get a lot of messages that the environment is sort of a place both far away and without people, and that's very, very deeply ingrained through media, business structures, a lot of different ways. And so again, part of what we're doing is helping the learner, whether it's a student, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a professor who's going to be teaching teachers, to really rethink what are the fundamental paradigms and how is the mindset that we're separate from the environment one of the root issues, one of the root problems and barriers to sustainability. Okay. So again, at this point, the learners have done a deep enough dive that we're really ready to think about sustainability as a set of values and a systems approach. And so as we look at going back to our strawberries as sort of snapshots of the food system, we compare the underlying values, and we've got a really fun hands-on activity to help people think about what these values look like in real life. You know, on one hand, the quote sustainable food system, it's really about nourishing people, land, the community, and the economy based on the idea of interdependence. That's the design principle, because all of this is connected. Food nourishes multiple aspects of our lives, local and regional knowledge, seasonality, ecological cycles. Agricultural practices ensure regeneration of the environment. The quote conventional system really looks more at food as a commodity that, you know, in many cases the goal is to increase profits so that we move production wherever it's quote cheapest. And again, I have these words in quotes because if we're using farming methods that result in salination, erosion, and we're eliminating the ability of the soil to perform that wonderful ecosystem service of providing us with food, then is it really efficient? If we're not counting all of those impacts in the price of the food, then is the food really, quote, cheaper? So that, again, is a whole other discussion on why the footprint is such a great tool, because it opens up the door to all of those questions. Why is the organic one more expensive? Or why is the local one more expensive? So that opens up doors to exploring what's really counted, full cost accounting, and then we're back at lots of great economics concepts like price and cost. Okay? So we continue the inquiry with the footprint by engaging students again and exploring more and more connections to land use and ecosystem services scavenger hunt, getting the students outside to really explore what are the different ecosystem services right on their school grounds. Feeding yourself for a year, this activity, students have to design a fictional farm to produce all their foods for a year. That sounds, oh boy, you could come up with anything. Well, they're required to think about how much land, how much cropland would I need? Am I going to have meat? Are the animals going to graze? If so, how much pasture land do they need? If they're going to eat grain, how much land do I need to produce that? Where's my water coming from? Where are all those wastes going to go? And so what we're doing is we're pushing the learner to grapple with the fundamental questions and methodology of the footprint, which, as we'll see, is really based on the land use types and the amount of land it takes to support yourself. Okay? So moving on. Okay, this is fine. So again, as I just said, so you know, and so everything we've done from the beginning, I mean, this could be 2 to 3 weeks of instruction, and we're building up to an understanding that the footprint is the measurement of the bioproductive land, cropland, forest, land that can produce needs to provide all the resources you consume and to absorb all the wastes. So there's two components of it: the source, the environment is the source, and the environment is the sink. The environment is the final place into which all wastes go. So again, the footprint is more than just what am I taking, what am I taking? It also looks at the implications of your waste. And so that's why it's such a great systems thinking piece. Okay. Okay. And so just to clarify a little bit about bioproductive land, it looks at forests, grasslands, waterways, whatnot. It looks at the average productivity of an acre. So for example, an acre of cropland here is going to produce more food or fibers than frozen land. And so they average out sort of the productivity. And, you know, in another conversation, we can talk about sort of the anthropocentric nature, that it's really looking at the environment for human needs. The footprint methodology recognizes that, understands that land use types are for all species, but the idea is that the impact of humanity has become so great that we need to focus a little bit on that, as we're also building an understanding that, guess what, we're sharing this cropland with other species, it's habitat, it's providing ecosystem services for everybody, not just humans. So that's a delicate balance, and that has to be brought to the attention again and again and again. Okay? So by the time the students actually take the footprint quiz, they've been very deeply immersed in the methodology. So we don't start with the footprint quiz because students see, I use this with my college students who are going to be teachers, they see that their footprint is very large. It takes 4 or 5 earths, 8 earths, 9 earths, and it immediately shuts down the inquiry. Oh, I'm guilty, you're saying I have to live in a cave, and that's not the entry point at all. That's why we start with what do we need for a fulfilling life, and then we start exploring how could having a lower footprint improve your life. Well, when I walk down to the farmer's market and I'm saying hi to the farmer and I'm buying local and I run into my neighbors, that's improving my life. I'm getting community, I'm getting well-being, I'm getting exercise, and I'm improving my health. And so in that way, reducing my footprint by shopping at the farmer's market it's more well-being, but it's also reducing my footprint. Now, is that available for everybody? No, of course not. And that comes into factors later as we look at what are the barriers and options and policy pieces. But it's really important to engage students in understanding that sometimes spending, well-being isn't always measured in money. With the housing crisis, especially, here in Michigan, a lot of families are staying in more, playing games together, having dinner together. And so there's been sort of a movement of reclaiming family, reclaiming time, and at the same time, we're consuming less, we're wasting less, and so again, becomes a great way to say, how can we improve our well-being while also reducing our footprint? So it doesn't come from a place of, pointing fingers and guilt and, you need to get rid of your electricity. Okay? So, again, I don't want to overwhelm people with the facts and figures, but sort of just one takeaway slide is that if we look at the total biocapacity, how much land is there available per person, just over 15 hectares, and a hectare is 2.5 acres, and I guess we are probably the only country here not on metric acres about the size of a U.S. football field. Here's the per capita EF, and so we're in a state of deficit. So this is the average footprint per person in the world, and of course there's great variation. And so we're in a state of deficit, or what we call overshoot. And so we're taking more than nature can renew. We're utilizing renewable resources faster than they can regenerate. Okay? And so that opens the door to helping students understand, in this case we're using math, what is regeneration. And so we have a simulation with students coming into and leaving a circle. It starts off with 10 students. Some come in and some leave at different rates. So sometimes more are entering than are leaving. So that's sort of regeneration. Other times more students are leaving the circle than are entering, and so that's depletion. And so just this concept of rate of regeneration is very, very important for sustainability. It applies very strongly to renewable materials, and it also applies to renewable ecosystem services such as pollution assimilation capacity. So again, this is all hands-on, and we, as an organization, we're really trying to bring this to life and really make it understandable, clear, and fun, and as the basis for high-quality instruction. Okay? And of course, here's another breaking off point. Here is a quick snapshot of global footprint per capita. So here's the world, and then here's Africa with a very low footprint, and here's North America. And so by this time, the students understand the goal isn't to have the lowest footprint or to be down here, because this is a footprint that's below well-being. This is a footprint that indicates people not having enough to eat, not having adequate shelter, not having adequate education, health care, and whatnot to live a fulfilling life. So again, that's another reason for not starting off with graphs like this, because it immediately shuts down. Oh, you just want me to live, like this, and it's like, no, that's not what it's about. How do we all have a fulfilling life within the means of the environment to support it? How do we start addressing this very high level of consumption, and then look, what are the equity issues here? What are the cultural factors here? What does gender equity have to do with that? What does population have to do with it? And again, those are all separate lessons, separate dialogues, but again, the footprint serves as that foundation to open up these different doors. Okay? So again, just the big ideas for this whole section, our source and sink idea, the land use types, the cropland, the forests, the waterways, serve those purposes. All of those life-sustaining functions are ecosystem services. They provide life-sustaining support for all species, not just humans. And again, my personal favorite, the economy is embedded in the environment. And our culture tells us whether or not we recognize this. Okay. Woo! Okay, Tim.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for your patience in enduring all of this. It's a fabulous presentation, Susan. Folks, do take a moment and tell us whether you, what aspects of the ecological footprint that you've just heard from Susan are actually new. We've given you a few examples here, but jump right in. We'll leave this slide up for about 20 seconds.
Okay, so we've built an awful lot of knowledge. Students have a analytical, a systemic understanding of sustainability. Now we're ready to apply it to decision-making and action. So we're just going to highlight a few ways we do that to engage students in decision-making and action at different levels. Okay? So one of the ways is getting students involved at the community level. Oh, back one, please. So what are different ways we can contribute to well-being in the community in ways that reduce our footprint and, hey, maybe don't even cost money? So we have students look at some case studies around bartering, helping each other, clothing exchanges, fixing things, learning from elders. And so they start thinking about, what are the skills that I have, what are the skills in this room, and how do we work together to increase well-being while we're lowering our footprint? And so again, it's community-based, and for folks who are working with students from diverse backgrounds, this is one key way to really make sustainability culturally responsive, because instead of saying to students, well, there's something wrong with your cultures and you should leave that at the door, you're asking them, go into your communities. What is the knowledge there? What are the practices there that people know, where people know how to do things? What is the wisdom of your parents, of your elders? What's going on in your community that's really an asset and that we can build on? And how can we use that to build bridges into, again, more advanced learning, understanding policy? And so, again, rather than treating students' backgrounds or cultures as deficits, this kind of approach really invites it in and is a great way to bring family and community into the school. Okay? Another way is really looking at policies. So this is a little bit more advanced, a little bit more sophisticated. Many of you have perhaps heard of the tragedy of the commons. This was an article written in 1968 where the author Garrett Harding laid out a scenario of, here's a shared field where all of the farmers are putting their cows on. And if I decide to add one more cow, that's more milk for me, but the impacts of that, the extra grazing, maybe some damage to the soil, that's spread out among everybody. So the benefit to me is more than the drawbacks. So this leads to what they call the, quote, tragedy of the commons. And so there's a lot of issues surrounding that and a lot of assumptions, which we won't get into right now. But then we say, well, how do we avoid that? What kind of mechanisms do we need to share and utilize open access resources in ways that are equitable, in ways that ensure that those who need the resource can gain access, where the decision-making process is democratic? And so the learners come up and examine different policy approaches. What if we privatized the field? What if we had a cow tax? What if we had the cow council, where people had to decide how long you could graze, how new families came in. And so this is a way to really pull people into understanding how the policy side and the social studies and the governance and the civics go hand in hand with the science. Because it only makes sense, the policy, the engagement in the policy only makes sense if we really understand what overshoot is, if we only really understand what's at stake. And so that's why I think, with the climate change initiative and some of the great work that I'm sure many of you folks are doing, really bringing the science and the policy together, it's so critical. It's so critical. It can't just be one or the other. Okay? Another great topic, and again, there's so many great ways to think about sustainability, is appropriate technology. Different kinds of designs, applications. We hear all about technology these days, and we forget sometimes that, a water wheel, a bicycle-powered pump is technology too. It's not always just about computers. This is a straw that has a water filter built into it. It's made by a for-profit company, but they distributed hundreds of thousands of these after the tsunami. So imagine being the engineer that wakes up and knows that today I'm saving 100,000 lives. And so I think one thing that's important is that with so much attention being paid to science and technology and innovate, we have to really step back and say, first of all, what is technology? It's this, and it's computers. And how do we decide what to employ it for? So what problems demand the use of technology, and which technologies do we employ, rather than simply saying, oh, if it's new, it must be good. If it's technology, it must be advanced. Therefore, it's good. So a critical analysis of what we mean by technology is another important component of this. Okay. So we're just going to look really quickly at just a quick integration strategy. Again, as an organization, we understand that teachers are really constrained, and we understand that sometimes all they have room for is a lesson here or a lesson there. But we've seen again and again the power of reframing or creating what we call a unit or a course makeover, using the footprint or other sustainability issue as a lens. So we're going to look at sort of just, again, using that instructional design framework to create a more robust course. Okay? So this is when we're working with teachers, we find this a lot. Their current curriculum, they have a strong discipline-based knowledge. It's really strong in the earth science, or, I cover cells and biology really well. But the students are not engaged and there's no meaningful application. So how do we take the good work that a teacher is already doing in their discipline and help them reframe it to make it more meaningful? Okay. So next slide. So now using that framework again, so we start off the exploration with explorations in the community. How do we connect the content to students' lives and communities? What do we need for a fulfilling life? What is the state of our community? How sustainable is our community? What's going on in our community and our lives that matters? Then going to that, again, that deep knowledge base. So now we're going to fold in some interdisciplinary lessons like we've seen on life cycle analysis, the footprint, and again, highlighting, the teacher can highlight their disciplinary expertise, but now we're helping the teacher stretch that knowledge a little bit so that science teacher can introduce policy. The science teacher can touch upon what this has to do with economics. After we've built that knowledge base, we're going to apply it with decision making, policy analysis. How are people affected by these different decisions? How do we make sure it's equitable? And then what are we going to do to have an impact? How can we plan, carry out, and evaluate projects that have a real purpose and audience? So that's just one way to take what the teacher is already doing and then wrap some different kinds of lessons and reframe the inquiry to make the unit more powerful. Okay? So finally, Tim said it'd be okay to just tell you a little bit again about what we do. It's Creative Change Educational Solutions. We're based in Southeast Michigan, and we work nationally, and we're supporting schools and colleges to really institutionalize this. So we're really trying to help get this in deeply into courses and curriculum maps, and then help institutions use it to support other reform initiatives around equity, around achievement, college readiness, teacher quality. We offer strategic planning, professional development, and we have an online curriculum and resource center where we house all of the materials. That is a subscription-based library, and I'll just show you a couple quick slides on that. Okay. Just in terms of our programs, again, we're trying to really do all aspects of sustainability. So again, the footprint is really a foundation. As you hopefully can see by now, that opens up the doors to green design and more in-depth life cycle analysis, energy, sustainable communities, ecological economics, sustainable food systems, and intercultural communication and human rights. So all of these, of course, are interrelated, and hopefully you saw some examples of that. But we were really trying to organize the content as it's occurring in the real world, as it's occurring in the emerging green economy sectors. Okay. These are just a couple of slides about the Curriculum and Resource Center. We have a Build Your Own Curriculum database where we have dozens and dozens of all the lessons you've seen and many, many more that we've developed in-house that you can search by age, discipline, topic, concept. You can match the concepts to your standards. And we also offer a collection of ready-made units and programs. So the whole footprint that I showed, that's up there as a ready-to-go course if you want to go that deep. Just really quickly, again, on the database side, you can search by grade, discipline, topic, and concept. And so a biology teacher can do a search on essay writing and combine that with skills in reading and literacy. So we've set it up to really support interdisciplinary teaching and learning. And so you get a variety of search returns, you get PDFs, PowerPoints, and then you can screen and sort and download those and share them with your students. Okay? Next. Whoops. Back one. Back. Okay. We also have ready-made units and I realize this isn't the best shot, but we have on one screen the different stages of the unit: establish relevance, investigate and reflect, decision-making and action. And then down in the column are the different lessons. What do we need for a fulfilling life? Introduction to the footprint. Policy research, writing a policy paper, you name it. So we set it up like this so that the teacher can access the whole course from one screen, and it's all laid out with the instructional framework so to support quality instruction. So you're not asking students to research footprint policies when they haven't even learned about what it is yet. Okay? And finally, lots of other great resources out there. Of course, the Footprint Quiz, Children's Environmental Literacy Foundation in New York has a school footprinting program. Center for Eco-Literacy in California, Facing the Future, and Learning for a Sustainable Future in Canada, and Shelburne Farms in Vermont. I apologize. I know there's a lot of amazing work going on in England, in Australia, in Canada, and we hope to work with you in the future. So I put the ones that I was most familiar with, but congratulations to all the work that everybody is doing out there. Okay. Thank you so much for your time and interest. I really, really appreciate it. Appreciate your patience with the technology. This is my first time on this particular format. And thank you so much to Tim and Green Teacher for organizing this and the amazing amount of work they've done.
Okay, and thank you, Susan. That's quite a, you've really packed in a wonderful amount of information here. Folks, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here, folks. Just take a moment. First of all, tell us where you're from, state, province, country, and I'll advance the slide in about 10 seconds.
Thank you for all the clapping and laughing.
Okay, well, now it's time for you guys to tell us, to ask any questions. Susan's given us a lot of information. All of you are on this webinar because you're interested in sustainability, you're interested in educating young people about this topic. Please take advantage of that white space in the bottom left-hand corner just to the right of main room. Type in a question, hit enter on your keyboard. It should appear in the chat room just above that. Please fire away. And we'll stay longer than 8:30 for anyone who wants to keep asking questions. While we're waiting for some questions, Susan, I've got a quick one for you. It's obvious that this topic really works at a college level and a senior high school level. How would you teach really young kids? I mean, I'm thinking about, kids who are 8 and 10 years old. How would you introduce the topic of sustainability with them?
Well, like I said, a lot of this, even though there's a lot of the depth part, you're right, is for older. What do we need for fulfilling life? How do we get what we need? How are we connected to the tree and the air? All of those very, very basic things at the beginning are very usable with young grades. We're doing a second grade, very basic life cycle lesson where they look at a bag and the source of it was paper that came from a tree. What do we do with it when we're done? Just basic awareness around materials use. And also at this age, it's really important, to really help students, think critically about the relationship with stuff. As part of maybe a follow-up, I can direct people to some videos we did with PBS, WGBH in Boston called Loop Scoops, where the kids think about where the materials come from, what makes them happy, and how can we reuse things. How is playing with our friends a way to have happiness and improve our health and that kind of thing? So it's really about scaling down some of the basics. But the fundamental question about what do we need for a fulfilling life, that's where it starts, and what supports those needs, that can be talked about in a very, very basic way. And then what can we do to help our community? And that includes, by that point, students understand our community includes the trees and the plants and the birds and our parents and the school. So it's really about building understanding of interdependence and also joy in being outside and exploration and wonder and all of those great things that, the No Child Left Inside movement, Richard Lou's work, all of that kind of thing is so important at the early ages. The WGBH resources is PBS, P is in Peter, B is in big, S is in Sam.org/loop scoops. And there's great videos, and I can also send that to Tim, and as part of follow-up, or there's a link on our site.
Okay. Hi, Susan. Well, I've just discovered, folks, bear with me, but I see lots of people have asked questions. They're not showing up in the chat room.
I
have
see
to
them.
flip screen. Oh, good. So why don't you repeat the question before answering it, and you can take which one you see.
Okay, well, here's a tough one. So what age does this most suit? And as I said, a lot of this, it can be any age. A lot of the life cycle stuff is great for middle school. Where did I get the 2 jam store? We developed that in all of these materials we developed in-house. So these are all materials we've developed through Creative Change. These are all the materials that we use in our trainings and our courses. Here's a very good question. Any suggestions on how to break the win-lose mindset of so many students that do not believe in equally sharing resources and opportunities? They often answer no. That just skipped, I'm sorry. They have been steeped in thinking that winners and losers is the only option, and that's where the culture piece comes in. That's where, we need to change the school culture. We need to change the overarching culture. It's funny that schools are talking about, collaboration as a 21st century skill, and yet everything that's going on in schools is really promoting competition. I think as much as you can through these kinds of activities, how do we all benefit? When one of us is better off, how do we all benefit? That doesn't mean that there's never any trade-offs or that it's, Pollyanna and it's, group hugs 24/7. But the reality is that, you have to start chipping away at that and helping students think about, how am I part of a community? How are my actions impacting the community? And that's everything from the classroom rules you have, the way your classroom is conducted, the larger school culture. That's a much bigger nut to crack. And unfortunately, the teacher can do a lot within the context of what they teach, but the students are getting messages that are counteracting that. So that's a much bigger nut to crack, and that's something that needs to change in the education system, the paradigm that it's winners and losers. Is there any place that breaks down activities by grade levels, but over the head for my second graders are laid out year by year? Yes, we do have that. We have, and again, I'm not trying to turn this into a commercial at all, but in the curriculum library, we have everything tagged by age. So you can get the second grade activities, the college ones, and that kind of thing. So, we're very conscious that obviously you can't use the same lesson for everybody. Let's see. Oh. Okay, so there's that. Whoops, I'm sorry, the messages are jumping around. How can we make students feel confident that they can actually make a difference in their community and the world? Engage them in activities that give them success. I would say, first of all, give students a knowledge base. I do get frustrated sometimes by folks who just, jump into the project without the learning. Students will feel a lot more efficacy and success if they understand why they're doing something. They've made a decision based on that knowledge, and then they take and plan their actions accordingly. It can be a small thing. It can be a school garden, for young kids. It can be collecting clothing and having a clothing exchange. It can be going to the city council and talking about the zoning change that's needed in order to have that farmer's market. It has to be age appropriate. There's some online articles we have linked from our site talking about some of these issues, especially with the young kids, and how do you make it, again, where people are very steeped in a monetary culture, how do you help kids break free from that? Okay. Is the program free, or is it a program you have to purchase? Unfortunately, it is a program you have to purchase. Again, we have that all on our website. I wish we could make it free. When we get grants, we do make it free for people, but I'm sorry, I wish we had those resources. Where are the articles found on the site? They're all over, they're embedded in the site. I will double check and make sure that they're on the site. It's also the Journal of Sustainability Education. Had an article on Ecoeconomics 101, a primer for elementary educators. Do you need to be a member? Yes, the curriculum library is subscription-based. Schools can get a membership, individuals can get a membership, that kind of thing. Isn't knowledge after learning against the 5E process of learning, knowledge after hands-on? No, the knowledge is built through hands-on. It's not, as you saw through these activities, we're not lecturing at the students. All of those activities are hands-on activities to build a knowledge base using the 5E inquiry model: engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate. So the knowledge building is done through an inquiry-based process. The action in the school or community is done after a knowledge base is built through inquiry, so that students are acting with information. They're engaged citizens. They're knowledgeable citizens. Okay. Okay, I guess I've been talking with students around my province in Canada, and I also often ask them if they consider themselves to live sustainably. They often answer no. How have you seen students take what they're learning from your programs, incorporate in their personal lives and communities? That's an ongoing process, and a lot of that depends on the repeated. That's why we want to internalize this and institutionalize it. Our work is mainly with the teachers and the administrators. We don't often see what the teachers are doing with the students. We hear a lot from the teachers, and there's a resistance factor. And one of the greatest quotes was, my students pretend that they don't care, but more and more and more of them are choosing knowledge and action over ignorance and apathy. So it's a learning process because you're asking students to get engaged, you're asking students to think about their own lives, and that's not something that can be accomplished in a single lesson. Okay. Anything else? Is the slideshow available for us to review? I think Tim will be posting that.
Yes, hi, Susan. We will indeed. This will be archived. We'll probably do some editing of the front end so we don't people don't have to wander through our technical difficulties at the beginning of it. But yes, it'll be archived using the same. People will be able. We'll send an email actually probably tomorrow morning to everyone who is on the webinar that will explain how they can access the Susan's presentation and ask more questions as well. I think this is probably a good time to move on to and let me do that just here. So, folks, if you wouldn't mind, I would again we're going to offer 2 free subscriptions to 2 of you who take the next minute or two to fill out this survey. The first question is, how would you rate this presentation? I'll give you about 5 seconds for that. The next question, of course, is going to be what could be more helpful. I know we're going to get lots of responses on that, but what did you like best about this presentation? And again, I'll give you about 20 seconds or a little longer, perhaps, just to type something in here. And how could this presentation have been more helpful to you? Please be blunt. Please tell us if there's anything that we could do. Obviously, we have to fix the technical problems, and we will do that. But if there's any thoughts about how this presentation could be better dovetailed to the situation you work in and your nature center and your school classroom, please type in a short note about how that could have happened and how it could have been better for you. I did say at the outset we're actually going to send you a survey monkey. So if you a survey tomorrow. So if you don't get a chance to fill in or you have thoughts after in the next few minutes that you didn't have a chance to type in 2 minutes ago, you're going to have another opportunity to give us more extended comments if you wish. So here again, just a yes/no question. Would you be interested in a more sort of advanced? This was Sustainability 101. Susan packed a lot in, but there's a lot more that she or others could do. So if that's of interest, please say yes or no. And finally, how familiar are you with our own nonprofit magazine? Again, have you ever read it? Do you always read it? That kind of thing would be helpful for us in further promoting upcoming webinars. And thank you again, folks. I'll maybe add, first of all, a hearty thanks to Susan for being our very first presenter. It was a rough introduction, but you handled it extremely well, and I'm very grateful for what you've shared with us this evening. You put a lot of work into this presentation, and it certainly shows. You've been doing amazing work for so many years, and really appreciate your taking the time to share it with us. And folks, there were some of you from the Ukraine in the middle of the night to Australia, lots of us from Canada and the U.S. Thank you very much for participating. We have 3 webinars next week. I hope you'll take the time to join us, and within 48 hours we will be announcing the two winners of the free digital subscription to Green Teacher. So once again, thank you very, very much for participating. Things will get smoother and over the next little while.
Thank you to everybody for your time and your attention and great questions. I know just kind of looking at a screen at a bunch of diagrams can be kind of tough. And again, a huge thank you to everybody at Green Teacher for this webinar series and the great work they're doing every single day. And thanks to everyone for the work that they're doing with education.
Tim? Okay. Thanks, Susan. Thanks so much. This is an amazing presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your help. I'm going to send Tim those links to the articles and the WGBH resources, and then maybe he can sneak that into the follow-up email.